Lord Furion organized a room at the inn for the newly formed party so they could get a good night's rest before heading out to investigate the situation south of the town. The first order of business was to do some basic maintenance on their equipment, replacing broken mail rings, checking weapons for any serious damage, patching up shields, etc. Since all Mattis had to do was check 6 or so daggers for damage, he was done pretty quickly. So he pulled out a book that said Wine Journal on the cover and wrote down some notes, and a short review of the port they tried earlier in the day. Parzival had seen no combat himself since leaving the Order's headquarters, so he just spent the entire time polishing his helmet. This was a habit that all recruits of the Radiant Mind picked up early after joining the Order. Even if earning their helmet from the Order was still many years away, the theory was that it was better to know how to keep that mirror-like shine while still using a basic helmet than trying to learn how after being entrusted with the care and maintenance of a priceless artifact of the Order. Mattis put his book away and pulled out some spell books to study in preparation for the coming journey. Sister Silvera was busy with prayer. Parzival was still polishing his helmet. Darren excused himself and stepped outside for some fresh air. It was still a little raucous inside the public room at the inn, so he made his way to the town square where the makeshift arena had not yet been taken down. Here, he found Lord Furion, who was deep in contemplation, staring at the night sky. Darren joined him. "Will this work?" Darren asked Lord Furion. "The party we have assembled." "Yes, it will work," Furion replied. "I didn't let the local boys win today. It was a cheap shot that I should have seen coming. I don't know if I am up to it. If I can't get that right, I'm going to get us all killed," mused Darren. "Don't worry about it. Besides, it was technically Mattis that let them win. He yielded when things were about to get out of hand to stop the fight. When you were knocked out in such an unsporting manner, Silvera went berserk. After taking out the flail wielder and one of the 2 remaining swordsmen, she looked like she was about to beat the last guy into pulp until Farmer Jim clubbed her with his weapon shaft to subdue her," said Furion. "Seems like some positive traits in party members on top of the potential for teamwork that the tournament showed." "What of Parzival?" asked Darren. When asked, he gave me quite an accurate appraisal of the likely outcome of the fight, based purely on what he observed whilst the sides were squaring off. He will be an asset in matters of tactics and strategy. Also, I assume he would have had similar martial training to yourself, should be handy in a fight. I have no idea what his obsession with that pole arm of his is, though. It's a bit of a non-standard weapon choice for his order. I also think his moral compass may temper that hot-headed priestess somewhat," answered Furion. "Last thing, what was with the port?" inquired Darren in a confused manner. "That was just to satisfy my curiosity. I already know I hate the stuff, but I was talking to a cheese merchant whilst the combatants were preparing for the skill at arms contest, and he was telling me how Mattis rode to town on his cart and the conversations they had on the way. I wanted to see if his palate really was as impressive as the cheese merchant claimed. It was pretty impressive. Not sure how it will help in your quest, but impressive," chuckled Furion. Darren laughed as he walked back to the inn. He already felt better after the strange pep talk from Furion. He slept soundly that night. After a hearty breakfast, the four headed out of town in a southerly direction on a well-traveled wide dirt path through lush forest. Embankments were present on both sides of the path. These were the result of the wear and tear of generations of travel. It was not so much that they had been built up, but more due to a lowering of the path that sat between them. The path headed in a mostly southerly direction, with the odd wiggle here and there, to avoid particularly large trees, or for some other unknown reason that no longer existed. After several hours of travel, the path forked where it intersected a river. A bridge crossed the river here, with the resultant path going off in a mostly westerly direction. The other option was the continuation of the path they were currently following, that now more or less followed the river in a vaguely southerly direction. Deciding that they were supposed to be traveling south to Orton, it seemed that the path following the river was the best option. There was also a signpost here to confirm the theory that somehow no one spotted until after the decision had been made. The sign pointed to Orton being down the river path, and the path crossing the bridge leading to somewhere called Iron Vale. A very dwarven-sounding place, if ever there was one. After having a laugh about the sign, the party decided to stop here for a short rest and a snack. They chatted about many varied topics. About their mission, Parsival's paladin quest, how long they thought their fresh food would last before they were forced to break out the long life rations. Of particular interest, though, was a story Parsival shared about the river. My grandfather used to tell me stories when I was little all the time about where he came from and about being a paladin. One time we went on a fishing trip together. He loved this river, said it was like a nicer, miniature version of the one he grew up on. He said, "See how many bridges this river has, Parsival. That means it is too annoying to cross on foot because it is either too fast or too deep. So don't fall in before you learn how to swim," he reminisced. That might have just been intended as a water safety lesson now that I think about it. But I asked what he meant by the miniature version, because it looked like a pretty big river to me. And he told me about the mighty Misharu River back home, how it is so wide that the boats could pass each other on it and still have enough space in between them that it was not possible to even shout to each other. Parsival continued. He said how the fastest way to get around was often river travel, but that it was sometimes dangerous because there were river pirates. And sometimes these slimy zombies would climb up from the riverbed and attack boats, and that was why he preferred the River Mel. Parsival concluded. After their break, they continued traveling. The terrain had become noticeably damper and swampier due to the path being now consistently next to the river. A noticeable contrast to when it was all forest surrounding them. The banks of the river here were muddy, and the quantity of insect life was firmly situated at the high end of the annoyance scale. Having to constantly swat at the various insects that wanted to use the travelers as a walking snack platter was infuriating. In the distance, they saw 4 frogs jumping around, probably eating the annoying insects. Oddly, as they continued in their direction, they seemed to be getting bigger but not really closer, leading to the conclusion that they must be further away and bigger than first thought. Reaching what was probably a safe observation distance, they got a closer look. None of them had seen frogs quite like this before. They were big, about 2 feet long, and for the most part very frog-like. Apart from their defining feature, a huge set of plump pink lips, like someone that went to a shady backyard beautician for lip fillers and had an allergic reaction to the junk that was pumped in. Parzival's curiosity got the better of him, and he did that walk that people do when they are trying to get a closer look at something that is confusing, where they squint and screw their mouths up and hunch down towards the object that has caused the confusion whilst walking towards it. Darren yelled out to him to stop, but all this did was spook the frogs.
Bleh, bleh.
They jumped towards the party, leaping up and planting kisses on them. A strange, reverse version of the old tale about the princess and the frog. Fortunately, none of them turned into a frog. The frog's lips had a sort of contact toxin on them, apparently, and the party members started feeling somewhat numb, so attempted to pull the frogs away from themselves. Unfortunately, applying the required pressure to the frogs' bodies to pull them free caused them to urinate all over the poor adventurers, but once the pressure was released, they hopped off into the river and were gone. After encountering the strange frogs, a decision was made to journey on until dark whilst looking for suitable camp spots. After around an hour or so, it was starting to get dark, and the definition of suitable was becoming less fussy. After a short time, a clearing was spotted. It had a large tree for shelter and a nice flat mossy area that looked very soft and inviting, especially after a day on the road. A watch rotation was decided upon by drawing lots. Parzival pulled first watch. The others tried to get some sleep on the moss. His watch was uneventful. Parzival kept an eye on the surroundings and tended to the little fire they had going. When the time was right, he went to wake Mattis, who was on the second watch. He gently prodded him with the butt end of his glaive with no effect. Then a little harder, also no effect. In exasperation, he turned it around and gave a little poke with the pointy end, also having no effect. Fearing maybe a delayed effect of the frog toxins, he knelt down to check on Mattis, realizing just how bad the frog's urine they were all covered and actually smelled in the process. Just before he made contact with the sleeping mage, there was a howl, and a wolf ran into the clearing, snarling and heading straight for the party. Parzival now tried to shake Mattis awake and was yelling at the others. However, once he made physical contact with the sleeping form of his traveling companion, he fell instantly into a deep sleep. What felt like a second later, Parzival woke up. It was daylight. He felt totally rested, like he had had the best sleep ever, and noticed he was cuddled up with the wolf that he thought was going to try and eat the rest of the party last night. When Parzival moved, he woke the wolf up. It seemed friendly now, but made a whimpering sound because it was still hungry. So Parzival gave it a scrap of dried meat from his pack, which was gobbled down. It looked at the party members expectantly, like a little puppy that wanted a scratch. Everyone gave the wolf a quick scratch behind the ears and prepared to leave. As they were leaving, a rustling and creaking sound could be heard from behind. Turning to see what caused the noise, a humanoid female form could be seen growing out of the large tree, seemingly made from the tree herself. She walked over to the happy wolf and gently patted it and fed it a small snack. It happily ran off into the undergrowth. She smiled and beckoned the party over. A small, heavy cloth sack was held out, and she said, "I found this. You may have a use for it." Sister Silvera was closest, so she graciously accepted. The stranger wrinkled her nose and waved her hand, and out of nowhere water fell from the sky and washed off all the frog urine. She smiled, then melded back into the tree and was gone. Silvara opened the little sack. It was stuffed full of gold coins. Continuing their journey, they had a long, uneventful day, taking occasional breaks to eat or put their feet up for a few minutes. Steady progress was being made, and markers along the way indicated they should make it to Orton by nightfall. As they trekked on, it became noticeable that the light was rapidly fading, and a gentle breeze began to pick up. It was pleasant at first, until the scent of decaying flesh was caught blowing on said breeze. The party members noticed figures coming into their visual range from the direction the breeze was blowing from, with a shuffling, jerky gait. As they got closer, the smell got stronger. Rotting corpses were coming their way with arms outstretched and torn, soiled, rotting clothes. Some of them seemed to have bits missing, probably rotted or chewed off by rats. The total count was 5.